Table. Is this volume good?
Use the mic, yes, use the mic.
Use the mic. Okay. I'm going to keep this mic here because in Berkeley, when they gave me a mic in my hand, I'm very I move with my hand, so the mic was not good. It's just everywhere. But thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. My name is Joshua Entis. This talk is going to be on sustainable activism, really focusing on how to handle what goes on into our headspace as vegans and as activists living in a non-vegan world, and really how to focus on forging a positive mental attitude with what we see as vegans and as activists, and how we can push through some things to work on sustaining our activism long term. And then also I'll share my story of unsustainability as an activist burnout, what I have done, what I've experienced, and some tips and tricks that I have figured out has worked wonders for myself and people who have come to talks like these to help them sustain their activism long term, hopefully indefinitely, with focusing on some simple self-care practices and mixed with the headspace and a few other little vegan nuggets in there that I will give throughout this. But I want to start this talk, actually I start everything with a hug, so turn to someone and give them a hug. Multiple hugs is good. I've never had chairs fall over in the hug part, so it's getting wild in here with those hugs. Yes, exactly. All right, we have one more hug going. Everyone watch. That looks tasty. I'm probably going to be calling out different foods that come in here. That's just the way my mind works. So I like to start everything off with a hug, just in this world, but being vegan in a non-vegan world, just being a human being in this world. We're faced with a lot, everyday life, jobs, kids, mortgages, all this fun stuff. So having hugs and putting a smile on people's face, that's something that I think we need more of. So that's just how I start every single one of my talks. So I encourage everyone to do that wherever they are in the world. Just hug people, put a smile on your face. And then I also, before I get going, want to do this little bit of an exercise for today. So please do this with me. If you could close your eyes. I know it's kind of weird in a restaurant right now and you might have food that you want to eat, but close your eyes and I want everyone to envision for the next 30 seconds their perfect day of rest and self-care. What does that look like to you? Is it smoothie bowls? Is it Netflix? Walks on the beach? Just envision that. Just for timing, I'll probably stop that because I see a lot of smiles on people's faces and I'm sure we could have sat there and meditated on that for a while. So I actually like to do this little exercise, not to make people feel that they don't want to be here right now and actually want to be meditating and doing these things. It's actually to hopefully have people at the end of this talk and throughout our life and our activism journey realize that those things that you thought about are the things that we need to start incorporating more of in our lives. Usually, for the most part, it's just Netflix and smoothie bowls for me, all day, every day. And I realize that I'm just not putting that into my life as much as possible, except for the smoothie I got today. And I just want people to understand that if you envision that, if you think about those things, and I saw half the room at least had a smile on their face when thinking about that stuff, that we should try to have more of these days, because that's what's going to fill our headspace with as much positivity, because as you know, as vegans and as activists, we're faced with a lot of emotion and sadly a lot of pain, suffering, injustice, whether it be firsthand or whether it be scrolling on social media and seeing stuff online. We are faced with it. So I like to do anything that I can to fill my headspace with as much positivity. So just quickly how things are going to go tonight. I'm going to give a brief little intro as to who I am, so you're not just listening to some dude speak and be like, who are you and what information are you telling me? So a little bit of credibility. And then the first part, there's two parts to this talk tonight. first part's going to be directly on headspace, and like I said, forging a positive mental attitude, and how I think that that's the first step in sustaining our activism long term. And I learned the hard way, and it's something that I now add into my daily practice, is really focusing on the positivity. I know it sounds so simple, but the positivity instead of the negativity. But it's very difficult because we are very passionate vegans and vegan activists, and we just want to go out there and see change now. And sadly, that tends to, for myself and for many of my friends and many of the activists that I've met around the world, we tend to neglect that part of just the mind part. And we tend to neglect the body and the soul when we are dedicated vegan activists that want to see change now. And then the second part will be the activism part. I'll share my story of activist burnout, sort of how I lost, I don't want to say control of my life, but I lost the vision of why I was doing what I was doing, even going as far as contemplating why I was vegan and why I was an activist, why I had set out to do what I did. And this was a really scary moment, but then how I was able to regain control of that. And I don't do this to scare anyone. I just want people to truly know that this is real, this is out there, and to share my experiences, because this talk tonight is something that's not talked about in the movement enough. And I want to share this with everyone because I think it's literally what is lacking in this movement in regards of taking care of ourselves and the people within our community, and then the whole vegan community as a whole, so that we can be out there being the best voices for the animals. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not filling up our cup, if we're not recharging our batteries, whatever analogy you want to use, how are we supposed to be out there effectively speaking up for the animals? So that's how tonight will go. So quickly, myself, who is Joshua Entis? I don't know why I said that, I just wrote that here, but myself, Joshua, born and raised in Southern California, Los Angeles. I lived LA? Woo, where? Small world? Thousand Oaks? Okay, Long Beach, close enough. I used to go there all the time. So grew up in Los Angeles, lived a very Los Angeles lifestyle, grew up in the same cities-ish as the Kardashians. Didn't have the Kardashian money, but sort of that's how my framework of life was built. It was on consumerism, materialism, superficiality, always focusing on chasing something bigger and better than what my heart truly wanted me to actually be living in alignment with. And I was always doing things for other people. I was always valuing what other people thought of me over my own opinion of myself. And I was just constantly in this cycle of not living in accordance to how I truly should have been living. I always looked back, or now I look back and say, hey, I was like a nonconformist, always wanting to do something different and break away from everyone, but I was stuck in this little environment that wasn't conducive to that lifestyle. I grew up eating a lot of animal products. I used to hunt, I used to fish, so I know that whole side of it, and that was really ingrained in my culture and in my family where I grew up, and did the whole high school, college, super boring part of my life. But in about 2013, I was doing some teaching English in Israel, and I found this thing called minimalism. Does everyone know what minimalism is or have an idea? So basically, I found this lifestyle that was making my heart scream like, yes, like this is the lifestyle that you need to be living. Focusing on eliminating the stuff in my life that wasn't adding value. People, things, places I was at, thoughts, I would just eliminate those if they weren't adding value. Competing with a steamer. So if everyone can still hear me, oh, there we go. Thank you, steamer. No, you keep doing you. I'll just speak around it, and my mind is everywhere. So found minimalism, and I was eliminating the things from my life that wasn't adding value, but then I was also including the things and adding things into my life that were adding value. And through this whole minimalist journey of this declutter of the mind, body, and soul, I started to internally look at the foods that I was eating and the lifestyle that I was living. And so I say that it was through minimalism that I found veganism, or that veganism found me. And my best friend and I, super boring vegan story, but we were just sitting on our couch Googling healthiest diet. We were like doing the whole elimination diets and stuff, and we had done the gluten, the alcohol, the caffeine, and slipped back up and went back to gluten, alcohol, and caffeine. But then we saw that veganism was popping up for the healthiest diet. And so we were just sort of like, high five, we're vegan now. And we just like set this whole like goal of just being vegan for a year. And it just shows, I know you're laughing, but it just shows how easy veganism truly is. But after a lot of self-reflection, 2 years of being vegan, I realized I was plant-based. And it wasn't because I wanted to support all the other industries, it was just because I was uneducated. I was still wearing animal skin, I was still buying products tested on animals, I was still going to San Diego and betting on horses and betting on other animals, and I thought veganism was a diet, and that's it. That's all I saw online. And then 2 years into that plant-based journey, my diet was completely vegan, I found Earthlings. Does anyone not know what Earthlings is? Cool. One person. I like it. So Earthlings is a very powerful documentary. Do you know Dominion? Okay, very powerful documentary that takes you super deep into 5 industries in which human beings exploit animals, and Earthlings just slapped me in the face. And I was like, well, I'm not vegan, and I could be doing a lot more for the animals, for the planet, for myself, because it's one thing to be vegan for ourselves. We all know that. See a lot of head shaking. You can save your own health, save a little bit of the planet, save a few animals, but the second that you choose to live in complete alignment with like an anti-speciesist mentality, here's that word we were talking about, and you actually engage in helping people come to that same conclusion that you made when you become an activist, that's when things get taken to the next level. That's when life just went for me. And so that was 2016, Earthlings. I realized I needed to be around my tribe. I needed to find some other like-minded people. I was only hanging out with one other vegan and just going to my local organic food shop and thinking I was the coolest vegan because I was making smoothie bowls and avocados that looked really beautiful and talking about veganism in a positive light, which I love. Online food bloggers, don't get me wrong, they're needed in this movement. That's how my sort of activism journey actually started. And then after that sort of realization, I started the Anonymous for the Voiceless chapter in Seattle. Does anyone not know AV? Cube of Truth, white masks, computer screens, looks like everyone knows. So I just got really into activism. I started leafleting, I started doing disruptions with DXE, I started bearing witness with the SAVE movement, and then I found AV and was like, all right, this is my stuff. I love talking with people, so I started the chapter in Seattle. We started doing 1 cube a week, then we started doing 2 cubes a week, then we started doing 3 cubes a week. I was like addicted to this activism thing, because I was actually doing something that was greater than myself and helping others on a mass scale, which is what I loved. And it was so different than how I lived. Then I had this wild idea of quitting my job and traveling the world to do as much activism as possible. So that put me August of 2017. Have a great night. I just saw you wave, so I'm waving back. So I started the Compassion Tour, which was my big goal of traveling to 25 countries and doing as much activism as possible. I left August 2017, and at the end of it, so about 4 months ago, I finished that trip, and that was 21 countries. I went to over 70 cities, did 250 actions for the animals, over 80 talks, and just, yeah, went wild with it. So I experienced a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about this movement, which I'll talk about tomorrow morning in the Next Level Activism talk. But the main thing that hit me is, yes, I experienced activist burnout twice, 2 different intervals, but something that I really had to work through, which is why I'm so passionate about this talk, is we see so much. Whether you have the boots on the ground, you're out in front of these slaughterhouses, or you are doing a Cube of Truth, showing people slaughterhouse footage online or on these TV screens, or if you're battling those keyboard warriors online, like, we all are consuming this negativity, this pain, this suffering, this death. At some point throughout our day, we're thinking about it. And on this last journey, I went inside of multiple killing factories and factory farms. I've done over 100 cubes. I've had conversations with really nice people and really upset people. I've stood outside of hundreds of slaughterhouses, and just, it's the same stuff over and over. So I really saw myself getting put in this negative headspace. And a lot of activists that I met throughout my travels last year are in this place as well. They're in this sort of balance between like having compassion fatigue, of trying to help but not seeing instant gratification, to having this vicarious trauma, this complete shift in worldview, which I'm sure a lot of people experience, this whole sort of misanthropic, I hate humans now, what are we doing, and I want to change it, to actually experiencing burnout, having low job satisfaction in the work that we're doing, not seeing that instant gratification, and having this mental and physical erosion to where we're like, I can't do this anymore. So all of that stuff was going on in my head from just all of this trauma that I was seeing, primary and secondary trauma, with being there or online. So I realized I needed to take control of my life so that I can still be out there speaking up for the animals, because I was just in this downward spiral of negativity and my head was just consumed with negativity. So that's why I came up with this talk, and that's why I devote a lot of my time to focusing on self-care and self-love routines for activists and forging this positive mental attitude. So I'm going to get into that. That's a little bit about me, and I'll get into what I want to talk about now. Not that I don't like talking about myself, it's just I'm kind of boring. So, quick show of hands. This is a safe space, so don't feel like you have to raise your hand, but I just want to do another little exercise. How many of you have ever dealt with something negative in your life before? I always get someone laughing. Thank you. No, I love it. It's keeping it consistent. How many of you are currently dealing with something negative right now? How many of you feel like you're not doing enough for the animals? Take a look at this one, everyone. Yeah, 2 hands, throw it up there. And then how many of you might be feeling unmotivated, lazy, having fatigue, maybe some depression in regards to the activism that you're doing? 2 hands there, yeah. So I didn't do this to call anyone out, make people feel bad. I actually do this little exercise to show people just how similar we are. And so for the first 2 questions, have dealt with something negative that always gets 100% and a laugh, so thank you. And the dealing with something negative now. I like to bring these questions up because I want people to realize just how similar we are. And when I talk a lot about community and infighting and building a community and strengthening community and how that's a huge step in our progression as a movement, sometimes we forget that people have just dealt with stuff in their life or might be currently dealing with something right now. Maybe they reacted a certain way in an online forum or in person, or this organization versus that organization, the heads of those just had this little battle. We don't necessarily know exactly what someone's been through in their life or what they might be going through right now. So I actually do that question to show people that when you are communicating with people within your community, the vegan community is small, everyone. Or the activist community, the vegan community is growing. Every city that I went to, massive vegan community, very small activist community. And it's growing, yes, but if you take the stat, 1% of the world's vegan and 1% of those are activists, I know we were talking about that last night, that's roughly 750,000 vegan activists in the world, and I think it is a lot less. So when we're talking with people in the community, when we're engaging in communication, maybe we're doing conflict resolution, maybe we just have an issue with someone in the community, always remember that someone may have gone through something extremely traumatic in their life that has forced them to react a certain way, maybe has triggered them, or they're currently going through some crap right now that's making it hard for them to just have an objective spot in this conversation. Maybe their head's in a different space. So always remember that someone might have dealt with something or might currently be dealing with something, and this has helped me in my communication within this movement, just to kind of leave that here in my head so I know when I'm communicating with someone to not be overly judgmental if they react a certain way, so I can really try to maintain a nice conflict resolution circle happening with this conversation. And then the feeling like not doing enough for the animals, this is majority of people raise their hand in this in all the talks that I've given. I want people to understand that if you are an activist, if you are here tonight, just coming to spend time with the vegan community, coming to learn hopefully something, or just to hear different insight and perspective, you're doing something for the animals. Not enough people are doing stuff for the animals. So if you are doing something, even if it's a cube a week, you should feel empowered, and you should feel really good about yourself that you're actually doing something. Now, I'm always going to advocate for pushing yourself to the next level and doing more activism, but maybe you're a mother and have a job, or 2 jobs and a mortgage and a side hustle, and you can only do 1 cube and maybe 1 vigil a month. Maybe that's your activism time. Do that and give all of your time in that one little time that you have and feel good about it so that you're not bringing yourself down. Like, it's going to feel like we're not doing enough for a long time. Actually, until we see total animal liberation, it's going to still feel like we're not doing enough because we want to see it now. So just always give yourself a reminder. This is a really good thing for a positive mental attitude, is just to understand that we are doing something, if you are doing something. Now, if you're just lazy and not sure if you want to go out to the demo, go to the demo and get active, come on. But always touch in with how you are feeling and understand that if you do go out there and you are actively engaging and helping creating change, then that's amazing, and you should give yourself a pat on the back for that. And then the last one is the feeling symptoms of burnout. And I want people to see that this is happening. It's happening all around the world. It's happening with people out there that aren't talking about it and not shedding a light on what's happening to activists up here, and physically as well. Like, activism is emotionally and physically exhausting. Even sitting at home, we all know what it's like to go through that thread of infighting, or just like handling those like carnist keyboard warriors, and we're trying and we're trying to battle those online. That's draining. Now put yourself in front of a slaughterhouse and bear witness and connect with an individual, or put yourself doing a cube of truth and have a really long conversation with someone. This takes a huge toll on our mental and physical well-being. So always know that this is happening, and we should be openly talking about it with ourselves. We should be laser focused on how we're feeling on the inside, mentally, physically, spiritually, but then also share that within the community, because the only way we're going to see that end goal come a lot quicker is if we're working together. And if we work together, we're going to be also working on ourselves as well. So the first part of it is the headspace. I talk a lot about regaining control of our headspace. Negativity always comes in there. And I will preface, I'm not a professional on any of this. I didn't go to school. This is just stuff that I've researched that has worked for me and stuff that I've forged into my own daily practice. But I highly recommend researching some stuff. Cognitive behavioral therapy is an amazing tool out there to be using, and has helped me a lot on my journey. But so regaining control of our headspace. I think as activists, as vegans and activists living in a non-vegan world, I'll repeat it again, we see so much. I'm not saying don't have these emotions and don't sit with the negativity and or feel sad or feel frustrated or feel angry. That's all normal. It's gonna feel that way. I get angry all the time. But it's what we do with those emotions and those feelings that makes all the difference. It's how do we process those? How do we internalize them? Do we label them? Do we initially react? And then do we find a solution? Do we move past things? Are we able to get back out to another action? Or does something take us out for 3 weeks, a month, 2 months? Are we not focusing on bettering ourselves and progressing in regards to taking care of what's up here? So actually what happens is, the way I looked at it, the biggest thing that I took away is my goal now, when something happens in my life, and I'll just say related to animal rights and animal liberation, it's, do I react initially or do I maximize that reaction time? So if you look at it like this, we've got this spectrum. You stub your toe. In the middle, you might be bearing witness and connecting with an individual, and then over here, you might have a family member pass away. All are going to bring up different emotions and different amounts of negativity. You stub your toe, obviously you're going to initially react, and it's going to bring some pain and suffering, but you might be over with that in like a minute or 2 minutes, unless it really sucked and you got to go to the hospital. That's a different story. Exactly, you know? So let's just say you stubbed it in a door, you know, and it's not too bad. And then in the middle, maybe you have a really traumatic experience at a vigil, or you had a really tough conversation with someone at a cube of truth that drains your energy, and it has, you know, your whole headspace has shifted. Or maybe life happens and a family member passes away, or something else that's traumatic. I'm not saying snap your finger and everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows and positivity is going everywhere. I'm saying, what can we do to take a moment objectively and view how we're feeling so that we can process that and move on and find the solution? Because I truly believe that negativity is completely external. You and I could be sitting here and something happens right over there, and you internalize it and label it as negative, and I internalize it and label it as positive. Same thing happens, 2 different reactions. So my goal now is to really have this whole internal dialogue in the moment when something happens. Let's take when the aha moment went for me was when I was at a vigil, and I was bearing witness, and I connected with this individual. And I got so upset and so frustrated. I wanted to go open the driver door and just start double middle fingers. I was gonna say double birds. I didn't know if that was a vegan statement. Using birds to flip people off, but I wanted to like get super angry and aggressive and have this like freak out and yell and kick the car. I just was not in a good headspace. Instead, that was old me. That was old militant, aggressive Joshua, which used to be there, which I still miss part of that, but I know it's not as the most effective. And instead, I sat with it for a moment, because I had just finished reading this amazing book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth. If anyone's heard of it or read it, beautiful, life-changing book, focusing on eliminating the ego and being a little bit more present. And I was reading a couple other books about listening to the roommate in your head. This roommate was that voice inside of me saying, Joshua, go rip that door open and go punch that driver in the face and hijack the car and like, let's go drive all these pigs to sanctuary. Like, that was the inner roommate. And I was like, all right, so there's this dialogue going on. I know it kind of sounds a little weird, but I'm telling you, it's a thing, the inner roommate. So instead of listening to my inner roommate right away and reacting on something, I said, how can I set myself up for success? How can I take care of what's up here and figure out maybe a more positive solution that's going to be sustainable for myself and sustainable for the action? Because if I would have caused a scene, maybe a viral video would have come into play, but it probably wouldn't have painted a nice picture for Activist. So I had this little dialogue in my head. It wasn't out loud. It was like in my head. I was like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I upset? Oh, obviously I know exactly why I'm upset. You know, would doing what my mind is telling me to do be the most effective thing for me right now? You know, what's going to be the end game there if I choose that route? And I had this whole little dialogue, and by the end of it, I came to the conclusion that, you know what? Go take a breather. Connect with this individual, give them some water, and go take a walk around the block, and come back and refresh your mind. And because I had this dialogue in my head, I was able to help myself. I used to react to everything. Anger management issues as a kid growing up, like I was instantly reacting to anything that pissed me off. And this was a really pivotal moment in my life to where I was like, if I can have this little dialogue, I don't know if it was 15 seconds or if I was sitting there for like 3 minutes having this like silent dialogue in my head, I don't know, but it happened. And I moved forward to something and I observed what was going on and I figured out the next step. And the biggest thing too is this quote that I read, and I want to tell this to everyone because I love it. It's a quote I read about 8 years ago, and I changed it a little. I don't know if I can do that, but I did. It's called, every second of every day you have a choice to choose positivity or to choose negativity. And we need to choose whichever one's going to significantly increase the happiness and positivity in our life. And I run this through my head every single time I'm doing an action, every single time I'm battling someone online, every single time my headspace is in a place where I'm not feeling good because of what we're going up against. And I reminded myself that we have a choice. You and only you. You don't have a choice for her, you don't have a choice for him. You're the only one that controls what goes on in here. And I know it sounds simple, and I know this is easier said than done. All this stuff is extremely difficult, and I'm still working on it daily, but it's not talked about enough. And if we remember that we have a choice, even if you are in the most depressed state ever and negativity is consuming you, and for 15 seconds you choose positivity and think about that smoothie bowl. Smoothie bowls make me the most positive person in the world. So like, I'm always thinking, I call them smoothie bowl moments. I'm like, all right, I need a smoothie bowl moment, and I'll go to this place of envisioning my favorite smoothie bowl. And for 15 seconds, I know it sounds silly, but for 15 seconds, I'm not thinking about the negativity. Maybe for 30 seconds, I'm not thinking about it. Maybe for 10 minutes, because now I'm in the car on the way to go get that smoothie bowl, and I'm super jazzed up. Like, you see what I mean, though? And it's easier said than done, obviously, in certain instances, but it's something that's so powerful that I have to remind myself. I have the choice every second of every day to choose what's going on in here, and that's it. Even when I'm out in front of a slaughterhouse, or when I'm inside of a slaughterhouse. I went inside of a slaughterhouse and watched the entire kill floor process of 60 pigs. And it was one of the worst things that I've ever experienced in my life, if not the worst thing I've ever experienced. And I wanted to grab every single one of those workers and not do something nice. But I knew that I needed to be in there, I needed to be present, and I needed to film and take photos. I needed to be in a clear headspace. So I had that dialogue with myself. I was like, dude, I know it's really hard to think about smoothie bowls right now. I didn't think about smoothie bowls in this case, but I just went to a place and said, what do I need to do right now that's gonna take care of my headspace and gonna help me be the most effective activist in this scenario instead of going out and losing what we had that allowed us to get in there. So I had this dialogue, and I chose what I needed to do, and it's so hard, and I'm getting better at it and better at it, and people are coming and giving me their feedback on how they're getting better at it and better at it. The simple thing is, remember, there's always going to be that little roommate in your head, and that roommate isn't you. That roommate is the one that's talking right now. This dude's weird for saying there's a roommate in your head, you know, like, that's the voice that's always going on. Listen to that roommate, but don't necessarily act on that right away. Always remember that you have a choice. You're the only one that gets to choose how you react to something. And then also take action. Observe, reflect on what's going on, and find the solution. It's if you had an emotional experience at a vigil, like I said, I'm not saying don't. It's very tough to be bearing witness and connect with an individual. But If you're like, you know what, I need 2 days for recharge, for reflection, for working on myself, then be like, you know what, I'm gonna do 2 days and then I'm gonna be back out there fighting. And then take the time you need for you, but then choose that time you're gonna get out there and be back out there fighting. Because I'm sure a lot of us know the people in our lives that have allowed something in their life to take them out for a month, 2 months, a year, 5 years, their entire life. And that's been the case in my life with some close family and friends. And it's they haven't been able to get out of something. And I know it's so much easier said than done. I want to emphasize that. But in this movement, we all have to be laser focused on reminding ourselves that no one else and no external factors get to choose how we feel up here. Because until you label it, it doesn't have to be negative. But the second you choose to label it, like with that instance where something's happening and you label it negative, I label it positive, we can label anything we want, however we want, inside our head. So always remind ourselves of that. And then there's a few things that I realized that, eliminating negativity, focusing on this positive mental attitude. How can we do a few things that's going to increase the positivity in our lives, coming into our headspace, with the simple stuff that we do daily that's not talked about enough? So those are the thoughts that we have, the words that we say, the things that we do, and the people that we spend time with. So it's as simple as this. If you have negative thoughts going into your minds, what do you think's chilling out up here? Negativity. It's like going into my vegan outreach conversations in the beginning of my activism when I was that militant, aggressive vegan. I had a lot of negativity going into my mind. Every time I would see someone staring at a computer screen at a cube and I needed to go talk to them, negativity went. I was like, oh, this person's gonna give me Jesus ate fish and they're gonna yell at me and spit in my face and it's just not going to be a good conversation, and then they're going to leave really pissed off and throw some food at the cube. This was my headspace. So what do you think happened when I went into these conversations? I had a lot more negativity there. I was a little bit more on edge. I was a little bit more frustrated. I was a little bit more aggressive. The conversations weren't as successful. Switched that a little. Started putting positive thoughts into my head. Positivity's chilling around there. I started to not assume and to not judge. And I said, you know what? This person's going to be really open to veganism today. We're going to have a great conversation. They're going to ask some good questions. I'm going to give some good answers. I'm going to ask some good questions. They're going to give some good answers, that kind of thing. And it's going to end in a hug. And that was my headspace going into now every single outreach conversation. I prime my headspace that way. Because if you have positive thoughts going in, what do you think is going to come out? You have a higher odds of having positive words come out. And if you have positive words come out, you have a higher odds of having positive actions take place. So look at the negative side, negative thoughts, negative words came out, it was a negative environment, negative actions. And then the last one is the people that we spend time with. This isn't talked about enough. We all, I'm sure, have had people in our life that have just sucked all of the energy from us and have been so toxic, and we have tried to help and we just can't. And they drain us to where we feel burnt out just from having a conversation with that person. Now, I'm not saying kick those people to the curb. I'm saying be mindful of the relationships that are in your life, but surround yourself with the people that lift you up, that fill your heart with joy and love and positivity. We all know what it's like to spend time with maybe some ex or old carnist friends, or the people that are making fun of vegans, and the people that do anything and everything in their power to belittle us and bring us down or make jokes. That's not a good environment for us. That doesn't foster a positive headspace. Now flip that around and spend time with a bunch of vegans and a bunch of vegan activists eating some really good vegan food, talking about cool vegan things. Like, that's a fun environment, That's a beautiful place. That's surrounding yourself. What is it? Your vibe attracts your tribe, or your tribe? One of those. Exactly. Yeah, you get it. So spend time with those people that lift you up, because if you're aligning your thoughts, your words, your actions, and the people you spend time with, if all four of those things are surrounded by positivity, the odds of you having more positivity going into your headspace is greater, far greater. And the reason, I know some people are probably like, I've gotten some feedback, like, why are you talking about headspace first and positivity and all this guru stuff? And I go, it's first step towards sustaining your activism long term, because if you are not working on yourself and you are not working on forging a positive mental attitude, how are you supposed to go out there and have effective outreach conversations? How are you supposed to go out there and keep it together when a truck is driving 300 pigs into a slaughterhouse every single hour? How are you supposed to handle those conversations online effectively if you're not in a good headspace, or if you're not, taking care of your physical well-being as well? That's why I talk about it first and foremost, because it's so important. It's like the number one most neglected thing in every vegan activist that I meet. How's your self-care routine? What self-care routine, you know? I got the animals to be fighting for, which I get, and I share that same passion and that same drive, but we need to be sustaining that long term if we want to get to that end goal. So that's why I focus on the headspace stuff first. So now I want to get into the activism part. The cube of truth. Do you know a cube of truth? Where they stand there with the computer screen showing slaughterhouse footage? It's a form of activism. We're doing one tomorrow. Yeah, I'll talk more about it at the end as well. So yeah, it's just a form of activism, a cube of truth. So I'll refer to it as a cube. It's just easier. Yeah. So thank you. And we'll do a Q&A at the end. Totally forgot to say that. Now onto the activism stuff. So you understand how important it is to take care of your headspace from what I said, but I want to share my unsustainability as an activist. I want to bring you into where I was in my life and what I experienced and why I spent the majority of my time focusing on talking about this stuff to activists. And I really care about every single one in this movement. My goal is to have no one in here experience what I experienced. Or if you've already experienced burnout, that you never have to experience it again, because it's taken, look at Gary Yourofsky. It's taken people out of the movement indefinitely, because burnout is real and it's painful and it's tough. So all started in January 2018, start of the new year. I had been traveling for 6 months. I thought I was superhuman. I'd been to 11 countries at the time. I was doing 1 to 2 actions a day for a solid couple months leading up to this time when I was in Berlin. And I was going full on. I was not sleeping well. I was not exercising. I was not taking care of my body. I was eating all of the amazing vegan delicacies around the world at all the best vegan restaurants, not to sound all cocky about all the vegan food I was eating, but it was so good. I just was eating all those double cheeseburgers and macaroni cheese pizzas with cheeseburgers on top of those things. Like, it was wild. But I wasn't taking care of myself. And I was in Berlin. I just got done with 7 full days of 2 actions a day. It was amazing, but got on a train the next morning, early in the morning, had a vigil late night, woke up, no breakfast, and I always eat breakfast. Trained to Hamburg, Germany, got picked up, taken to a workshop, and this was a workshop where people were coming from all over Germany to attend, and pounded an espresso shot, got up on stage, and started giving this talk. And about 10 minutes into this talk, I started to feel as if what I was saying wasn't making sense, like my words weren't going together, and I love public speaking, I love talking to people, and I never usually have problems talking on stage. But it just was a really weird moment of not feeling like I was putting like a coherent message out. And then I started to get extremely hot, started to sweat a lot, and my vision started to get a little blurry and shaky, and then I just couldn't see. And then it got super weird for a moment, and I don't remember the next thing, but then I was outside. And people told me that I had raised my hand and said, hey, I need to take a break, I'm feeling like I'm gonna pass out. And I walked through the middle of the audience, went outside for 15 minutes, came back in, finished my talk, went to a cube of truth, and tried to have one outreach conversation and couldn't finish it. I had to bring someone else into the conversation because I felt like I was gonna pass out, which I've never had to do in my life. I went inside the mall there, and that's when I sort of put my head on the table and realized that I had just completely shut down. My mind, my body, my soul, this must have been what burnout was. Fast forward a couple months after speaking with a few professionals, it was a panic attack, and never in my life have I ever experienced a panic attack, an anxiety attack, depression, anything like that, but it hit me on stage giving a talk for the first time, when this is something that I've been doing for 6 months. So that's when I had realized that everything had just shut down. That was burnout, and I truly needed to take some self-reflection, because for the next 3 days was probably the lowest of the lows for me in my entire life, because life also decided to happen as well. Thank you, life. So outside of activism world. So in those 3 days, I had a lot of self-reflection time, and that was the time when I forgot why I chose to be vegan. I forgot why I was an activist. I contemplated even being vegan. I said, what does it matter anymore? I'm not making change. It's going too slow. How am I going to make a difference, just one person? I started to have all these really negative thoughts. And this was a scary place for me, because this is something I've been devoting my life to for the last year, and something that I was so passionate about, and something that I just put a lot of time and energy on. And here I am sitting, why Am I vegan? Why am I an activist? And why am I here in Hamburg, Germany, doing what I'm doing? And this was really tough. And I needed to regain control of what was going on, else I was definitely going to go home. And even worse, I thought I was going to give up veganism. Don't worry, I didn't give up veganism. Never will give up veganism. But if it weren't for my hosts, I had amazing support system in Hamburg, Germany. They drew me like baths with candles and Spotify playlists, and were like, don't leave the couch, don't leave the bed. They were so nice, but what that allowed me to do is have some deep internal reflection. I took a very deep inventory of what was going on inside of my heart, inside of my head, for about 6 days. And I was like, dude, you are not taking care of yourself. You're not focusing on your physical well-being, your mental, your emotional well-being. You are literally burning the candle at both ends. And this is what happened. A panic attack on a stage giving a talk when that's never happened in my life, nor have I ever seen that happen to anyone in my life. And I needed to change something, else I was not going to get back out there. So this is when I realized everything sort of just shut down, mind, body, and soul, and that burnout was a real thing. And I always heard this little taboo thing about burnout. Oh, watch out, Joshua, are you doing too much? Should you slow down a little? Maybe stop traveling so much and going up and down in planes and trains and this and that and jumping around from city to city. And so now I was actually starting to listen to that. Oh, maybe this is a real thing. Maybe I need to. Because I'm sure a lot of you in here either currently feel this way or have in the past of like, I can't take a break. If I take a break doing activism, who's going to be out there fighting for the animals? That's how I thought every second of every day. I can't take a break. I got to go on. The animals are suffering. My pain is nothing compared to what the animals feel. And I would tell myself that all the time. That forced me to not take these breaks and not take time for myself. So I did some deep inner reflection, and actually what I did and what I recommend, and my goal is to encourage every single activist to do this, so all of you, I would love for you to do this, is I took a pen to paper, and you could do fingers to keyboard or voice to audio, but I wrote down every single thing that I thought I needed to take better care of myself. So it was like a personal vision board for self-care and self-love. And I know it might sound silly, but it sounded silly to me at the time. That was probably me just projecting my old thoughts. But I wrote down everything from eat more kale, eat more smoothie bowls, listen to this positive Spotify playlist and not this like indie singer-songwriter breakup music. Even though I love that music, but when I'm in a negative headspace, that just sort of brought me down. Call my friends and my family more. Go to sleep before 10. Try to eat healthier. Go on walks, exercise. Take a day off of social media. I started to write down this list, this personalized list for Joshua, for me, for what was going to take better care of myself. Sort of like the whole envisioning exercise in the beginning. I started to write that stuff down. And then what I started to do was I started to implement those things. I started to eat more smoothie bowls and eat more kale. I started to listen to this Spotify playlist and not that one. I started to call my family. I started to go to bed before 10. I started to leave my phone out of my room. I started to not check my phone for the first hour of every single morning. And I just started to do all these things on the list. And then what do you think happened? I started to regain that confidence. I started to remember why I was vegan, why I became an activist, who I was fighting for, why I quit my job and left my life to do what I was doing. I started to get that courage and that confidence back. I went out to a cube of truth. Then I went to a cube and a vigil. Then I went to a cube, vigil, and gave a talk. You see what I'm saying? I started to get back into the swing of things. I started to be able to do the things that I love to do and that I felt obligated to do. It was my duty to be out there fighting for the animals. But a funny thing happened. It was not really funny, but a cool thing happened. I started to do more actions and travel more, but feel better. Because what I was doing is I was sustaining that energy over just a longer period of time. I wasn't just giving it in spurts doing things. I wasn't putting everything into one thing because I was focusing on myself too. So I was having my recharge days. Before, my battery was always at 30%. Now, I started to do things. I started to do more activism, but then I started to do more self-care. I started to do even more activism, so I started to do even more self-care. Now my battery was like 60 and 70%. Now I felt better and I was doing more and traveling more and getting more stuff done. And this was an amazing thing for me. So this is what I've actually told a lot of people to do, and it's great. People have sent me photos of like their little personal vision board. Eat kale was number 3 on the last girls that sent it to me. I was like, yes, I love kale. It's great. So I asked everyone just to do this. Even if it's one thing, even if it's go to sleep before 10, write that one thing down and start doing it. If you have 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, 10 things, just write it down, whatever you think you need, and start doing it. I look at it like, as an activist, you can look at us as an individual business. I like to go on a business level, or us as a collective as a big business. The animals are investing in us. They want us to be the best business out there so we can really give the best product out there, which is total animal liberation. Let's get the world to be vegan. But if we're not taking care of ourselves and investing in ourselves as a business, we're not going to be out there to give our best work in our operating hours. So when we are out there fighting, we got to give our best, as close to 100%, as close to a full cup as possible. And that's going to happen when you have a nice balance of self-care and activism. But don't get me wrong, I want people to be doing as much activism as possible, but I truly also believe that we have a lot of extra time there to be focusing on us. A lot of extra time. We just have to clear out that space and eliminate that thought of, if we're taking a break, we're not doing justice for the animals. Because that gets me into the next thing, because I don't like to tell people what to do, except for now. Take a break. Every activist needs to take breaks. It's my one mandatory thing that I try to tell every single activist. Take breaks and do them when you think you need to. But like I said, if you're just feeling a little bit lazy and you want to watch Netflix, go out to that action and get active. But if you're truly having some self-reflection and feel emotionally burnt out and you're on edge and you have a little bit of anxiety or frustration or a little bit more anger than usual, you might need to take that break. But I have that solution, because a lot of people feel like they're not doing enough for the animals, and a lot of people feel that if they take a break, they're not doing justice for the animals. So I had to come up with a solution for myself and for everyone else to help us understand that it's okay to take a break. So I relate it to a hockey analogy. That was just people talking.
Water break.
So I had to come up with this solution for feeling like I could take a break. So I related to a hockey game. Everyone seen hockey here? I don't know, depending on what country I was in, they were like, hockey? What's hockey? And then when I went to Canada, I was like, has anyone seen hockey here? They were like, come on. I was like, oh shoot, I'm in Canada, you know? Had to remember where I was. So a hockey game. Both teams, their end goal is to win the game. Our end goal as activists is total animal liberation. There's no hockey team that's going to win the game without substituting players. I mean, okay, you could probably find something in recorded history where a team didn't substitute players, but you get the point. To win the game, you got to substitute players. To win our game, we have to substitute players. It's going to get easier the more activists that we get, because that'll take a little bit less pressure off of us and then spread that out over a larger number. But the thing that jumped out to me the most about the hockey game is, if you've ever watched a hockey substitution, how they change players. The game doesn't stop, it's wild. 2 people jump over the wall, 2 people jump out, or I think it's wild, I think it's the coolest thing ever. Like, they're just hopping over this wall, and then 2 people are hopping out. I don't know how they do that in pads and skates nonetheless, but they're doing it. The game doesn't stop. You could score a goal when players are substituting. You could win, the game could end, and you could win the game when players are substituting. So that's how I look at it in this movement, in the activist movement. When this table back here is taking a break, this table's jumping over that wall and is out there fighting. When this half of the room is taking a break, this half of the room's out there fighting. When Phoenix is taking a break, San Diego community is out there fighting. There's this ebb and flow that we need to remind ourselves of, that there is going to be someone else out there fighting if we're taking care of ourselves. If we're all just burning the candle at both ends and we're all going full on and we're not taking breaks, then when 75% of the movement burns out, who's going to be there to jump in and take their place? But if we're all having this balance of this self-care and this taking a break for ourselves, then we're going to get to this place where when someone who's 59% jumps over the wall and needs a break, you're coming in at 71% because you just had a nice 2 days of self-reflection and self-care and checking things off your list. Now you're out there fighting. And then when you need a break, you're going to be out there fighting. So this has helped me tremendously, and I have so many people who will message me and be like, all right, hockey team, like, I need to tap out, I need to take a break. So I actually have this fun little thing that I do. You don't have to do this, but I actually love doing this because I'm a big believer in accountability. Accountability for ourselves and accountability for each other in this movement. So when I take a break, I make it apparent to either post something on social media or reach out to some close friends and say, hey, I'm taking a break, I'm tagging you in.
can you jump over the wall for me this weekend? If you weren't thinking about getting out to a demo, can you go out, speak to a few more people at the Cube, take a few more photos at this vigil, maybe post an extra post on Instagram this week for me, and then when you need a break, I'll jump back in there. Or if I'll post something on social media like, hey, I'm taking a break, everyone, to rest and recharge, highly encourage you to get out and get active if you were on the fence this weekend. Send me a photo, do something, show me that you got active, just so that we can hold each other accountable. It actually empowers other people because they also feel a sense of like they're helping someone else in this movement. So I like to do that. If you ever need a break and want to sort of have this uninterrupted break, because I'm a big believer in uninterrupted break. Not a break at home sitting scrolling the Save Movements page on Instagram watching everyone bearing witness. That's not a break. That's consuming activism and content. I see some laughs because you're all probably guilty over there. I'm guilty as well. So it's tough, but uninterrupted breaks is going to be what's really going to take us to the next level in regards to self-care. So hockey team analogy, think about it. Reach out to other activists in the community when you feel like you need a break. It's a fun thing, make it a game, but be ready when you need a break, you know? Be ready to be in there. Take care of yourself on your days off so that we're fair to everyone else. If we can be focusing on having that balance. So there were a few more ways that I found before I sort of sum this up and do a Q&A. A few more things that I have found can really impact the sustainability of our activism. So the first and foremost, headspace. We talked about that in the beginning. I think forging a positive mental attitude is step one, and it has benefited my life, not just within my activism, but in my family life, my relationship life, everything that I do. A positive mental attitude is amazing. There's a really good book that I always have to talk about. It's called The PMA Effect by John Joseph. If you haven't read that book, highly, highly recommend it. I don't have it with me. The PMA Effect, Positive Mental Attitude, amazing book. He's vegan as well. So, positive mental attitude, headspace, so important. Then we have a self-care and self-love routine, so important. But there were three other things that I found can significantly increase how sustainable our activism is. And that's one, aligning our activism with our skills. Two, community, togetherness, unity, working together. And then three, our tools. So I'll break those down quickly. So the first one are our skills. What I realized is that a lot of people are going out and doing like one-size-fits-all activism. Before I got into activism, I thought the only way to be active was to go and yell at someone on the street and have a debate and then put it up on YouTube. I thought that's what was activism. Or running up in a Whole Foods and chanting. I thought those were like the only two things that you could do to get active. After traveling and doing so much activism, I realized that there are so many ways to get active. And that every single one of us has a unique set of skills or traits that come natural to us, that we love to do, that fills us up with joy, maybe that puts us into flow. Maybe you're a writer, a musician, someone that's into theater, dance, video editing, public speaking, philanthropy. Everyone has stuff that they're good at or that they love to do. And what I found is when we're going out and doing activism that might not be what's comfortable for us, and that might not be something that fills us up with joy, we exert a lot more energy doing it. And when we exert a lot more energy doing that activism, it's just a one-way ticket to burning out. Now flip that around and start doing activism that fills you up with joy and that you love to do and that comes natural to you, you're going to exert a lot less energy. So I use an example of this guy who, in the beginning of his activism journey, had social anxiety, was an introvert, can't stand talking with people, told me I never want to speak with people. That was his thing. Going out and doing vegan outreach is probably not the best form of activism for him right now. There are so many other forms of activism that he could have done. That's him probably utilizing a lot of energy to get those results. Someone like myself, I majored in communication in college. I was a salesman for 4 years. I love public speaking and I love talking. Doing vegan outreach is effortless for me. So I look at it as the 80-20 rule. If you've heard of, I think it's Pareto's principle. In business world, to explain it a little, to be an effective or efficient business, essentially you would want 80% of your profits coming from 20% of your customers. That would be awesome. The way to look at it in this sense is you would essentially want 80% of your results coming from only 20% of your actions. That's efficiency. That's using our energy right. Look at this guy over here that had the social anxiety and was introverted. Him doing vegan outreach is using 80% of his energy to produce 20% results. Myself uses 20% of my energy to get 80% results. So we need to switch that, or try to work on switching that energy usage, because that's going to be how we're going to sustain that activism long term. Doing the activism that fills you up. If you like to write, start a blog. I had this lady in New Zealand who came to this talk, and then 6 months later she wrote me an email, such a sweet email, thanking me for the time. I didn't even get to talk with her at that workshop, but she said she was so impacted by this section specifically about our skills, that she realized she was doing activism that she didn't enjoy, and that was causing her to utilize so much energy, so that when she got home, she just hit the bed and slept for 16 hours. And she was like, that's not the best usage of my time. So she goes, I'm a writer, and I'm gonna do what I love. I'm gonna write. So she wrote a book. And at first I was like, you wrote a book in 6 months? Like, what's your secret? Like, that's awesome. But she's like, I wrote a book, it's called The Shed, and it's putting human beings in the position of animals within factory farming. And I asked her a few questions. I go, well, one, that's amazing, but how did you feel when you woke up every morning? She goes, like a freaking rock star. Had so much energy. Did you enjoy writing this book? She goes, I didn't stop. That's why I wrote it in 6 months. I was like, did you think that you were going to impact people? She goes, I honestly felt like I was being more active than going out to this demo that I was doing before. And now she put out this book, and she mailed me a copy, which I need to read it. Need to read it soon. But she put out this book, and she enjoyed doing that for 6 months, and she felt jazzed up and motivated and not burnt out. Whereas when when she was in that group and she wrote in this email, she felt extremely exhausted at that time, symptoms of burnout, and she was doing 1 cube of truth a week. And that's where she was using all her energy. I met a girl in the Netherlands who loved to dance. She absolutely hated confrontational vegan outreach and chatting with random people on the street. She felt like she was intruding. So she told me this awesome story, how she aligned her skill or her passion with activism. She went to the streets, she put some music on and started dancing. She had a massive circle of people around her. She stopped the music and said, all right, I'm going to talk about veganism now. And if anyone wants to come chat, feel free. 90% of the people left. 10% came and sat down. So now she sat down and was able to have a very comfortable conversation, and one where she didn't feel like she was intruding. That was her sort of mixing her passion with vegan outreach and finding a way to where she felt good about what she was doing. If you like to edit videos for yourself, for other activists, make movies. I still think we should have vegan plays out there, and like the YouTube mini documentaries. If you like to speak with people, get out there and speak with people. Try to utilize some of your skills and your passions. Not all of them. Save some of them for your self-care routines. My really good buddy in Australia, he's a musician, and now he's taking a break from street activism and focusing 6 months on creating an animal liberation focused album. And I think that is so cool. And we need that. We need all of it in this movement, not just one thing. We need all of it. If we start aligning our activism with some of our passions or some of the stuff that fills us up with joy, we are going to exert less energy when we're doing it. We're going to go into a state of flow, like this lady writing the book. That's massive activism. We might not look at that as conventional activism, but it is. Or when I'm going out and doing vegan outreach, I'm in this state of flow where I just don't even think about life, and I love it. But that's not for everyone. So try to align your activism with your skills, with your passions. I call them superpowers because I think vegan activists are superheroes. It's kind of corny, but I had to throw that in there. So the other thing about the 80-20 rule too is if you have 100% activism time, focus 80% of your activism time on the activism you love when you're doing activism, not just lifetime. And then 20% of the activism time, trying other forms, supporting other organizations, and doing that sort of fun stuff. Because then you might realize that there's another form of activism that you like, or that touches a different part of your heart, and that fills your mind with more positivity than this form, and you can switch that way. So the other one is community. I'm a big believer in community, and I think that strengthening the community, the vegan movement, the activist movement, is another step in regards to helping us achieve that end goal a lot quicker. So I don't want to sound super negative, but I always have to talk about this infighting. Has anyone not heard of infighting? Okay, so there you go. Put your hand down in the back now. So infighting basically is within any social justice movement, in any organization, any business, in a family. It's when people with the same common goal or objective are fighting from within. So we'll look at the vegan movement. It's when vegans are fighting vegans. And this is the worst thing that could happen to this movement, and is one of the leading contributors to burnout. People don't talk about infighting as a contributor to burnout, but it is. We all know what it's like to wake up and see that thread where vegans are bashing vegans because someone accidentally ate egg. And now in Vegans United, it's 160 people in this thread of making someone feel extremely bad. Think of how outsiders or new vegans are seeing this. Think of how the meat, dairy, and egg industry are looking in on this chat and just kind of laughing. Infighting is what brings us down, and instead of bringing each other down, we need to lift each other up. The majority of infighting, which I'm going to talk about tonight, happens on social media. And I think my goal is to have a conversation with every single vegan activist and have us understand that we have the power to, one, not contribute to infighting, and two, end it within our community. Now, I don't want to say end all conflicts, because conflict is within our nature, but it's how do we resolve those conflicts and how do we figure out that solution so we can remind ourselves of who we're fighting for and our end goal, the game, the goal we're fighting for here. So social media, we all know what it's like. Those threads, those keyboard warriors, other activists fighting other activists, the deadly screenshot and the share, and then the pressing the share button 100,000 times and stuff going wild. So I want to share this. It's not a silly story, but it is. You will probably laugh by the end of this because of how silly this is. But I share this story because it's the most simplistic form of infighting that did so much damage to an individual in the movement, but has such a simple outcome. Does anyone know who Sonia Say is? So Sonia Say is an activist, and she's had a few viral videos on YouTube. One of them, she's in a bee costume. She's Spanish, thick accent, and talks about veganism. She's so cool. And so basically, she has a rescued Fennec fox, Jumanji, super cute. You should totally check him out on Instagram. And she feeds her fox, Jumanji, vegan cat food because her vet says Jumanji can thrive on vegan cat food, and all the studies are there and the paperwork's there. Someone took a screenshot of Jumanji when Jumanji had like a rash, like a allergy to something where Jumanji looked kind of sick. Screenshot that, put it on social media, and started writing hate messages to Sonia. You're not vegan, you're supporting animal cruelty, die, 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 blah, blah, blah. Long story short. In the next 48 hours, that post was shared 16,000 times on Facebook. Shared 16,000 times, not viewed. It made its way to BBC Radio, The Guardian, all of these like big media outlets. This was what was talked about. She started to get hate and death threats on social media. Her account got shut down for 30 days. Like, she went to an extremely dark place. And I had a conversation with her as this was happening, and she was not in a good place. This brought down an amazing human being, just a human being in general, let's go a step back, and someone who does really powerful online work and in-person work as well, and it brought this person down. It took someone off of our team and put him out. It didn't just substitute a player, it took them out of the game. And for 48 hours, that's everything that was talked about. Other vegans, oh, did you hear about Sonia Say? Oh, she's not vegan anymore. And this is what everyone was talking about. Meanwhile, over here in animal killing factories and stuff like that, that stuff's going down, yet we're losing track of who we're fighting for, and we're getting off on this, what could have been solved like this. I'll explain it. I usually have my computer down here, but it's, someone goes, pretend my computer's up here. So, on Facebook Messenger. Hey Sonia, hopefully you're having a great day. Just wanted to chat with you about a few things I was a little concerned about. Do you have a moment? Oh yeah, Becca, absolutely. Her name wasn't Becca. Yeah, Becca, absolutely have a moment. What did you want to talk about? Well, I've been noticing that you feed Jumanji vegan cat food, and after my research, I'm not aware that that's actually healthy for Jumanji, and I just wanted to check in. Oh, hey, thank you so much for checking in. Actually, my vet said Jumanji is thriving on eating this vegan cat food. Here's the information if you wanted to see it. Oh, yeah, thank you for doing that, Sonia. Want to grab some coffee? Right? Could have been simple. Maybe not that long of a dialogue, but I like to show this example. And it was so cool because at the vegan campout, she was actually in my talk, and I was like, is it okay that I tell your story, Sonia? Like, I've been telling this story without actually letting her know, but I tell this story because it's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. could have been solved with a simple message, but just how powerful a screenshot could be, just how powerful a lack of communication can be. So my message to everyone is, when you're in a community, if there's something that you're not liking on social media, there shouldn't be a my form of activism is better than your form. My organization is better than yours. My social media platform is bigger than yours. I'm cooler than you. Or this restaurant sucks because of this, and this restaurant sucks because of that. This restaurant doesn't suck, by the way. I just didn't want them to take it out of context. There shouldn't be any of that. If you see any of that online, don't hit the share button, please. Don't screenshot and post it and even show a friend. How ridiculous is this? If you have an issue with someone, let's communicate with that human being about it. Let's all work on being our adult selves and have, even if you're kids, communicate. Let's have that conversation with people. When there's something that you're not liking, have that conversation and see if you can come to that solution. I always try to do things in person. In person is best. Over the phone is second, and if it has to be over message, then that's what it has to be. But try to work this out. Remember, we are in this together. We are a very small number. Let's not take people off the team. Let's strengthen the team. Let's encourage more people to come, because if this stuff's happening all on social media and new vegans are coming into Vegans United and seeing this, I would jump right out. I'd be like, I'm not getting involved in this. And then look at activists jumping in there. I'm not getting involved in activists if they're just going to be fighting each other. And this organization saying they're cooler than this organization. Like, a lady in my Vancouver talk told me that she contributed to massive infighting that affected her community, to where she was upset that one of the restaurants wouldn't share their Animal Rights March post. So she started to talk a bunch of crap about the restaurants online in all the Facebook groups without knowing any of the context behind it, and just started bashing this restaurant. We need vegan restaurants, everyone. We need more of them. We need more people to come to them. We need these businesses to thrive. People stopped going to that restaurant for a week. That restaurant was in just like the worst space ever, because no one would go, because this one predominant activist in their community said something. So people believed that. She then, in this talk, was like, you know what I realized I should have done was just go into the restaurant and say, hey, I have some things I want to chat about. Let's have this conversation. And even if at the end of the day they didn't share it, okay. Conflict resolved in a different way, and just be like, hey, they're not going to share it today. Let's move on to something else. Which other restaurant will? We got to work together. So that's my little spiel on infighting, because it's so bad. I've seen it. It's happening. It's not just targeted to Phoenix. In every single one of those 70 plus cities I went to, infighting was present. Even in a small, like 20-person Tallinn, Estonia community, infighting is happening. It's happening all over, and we have the power to not contribute to it. And when we don't contribute to it, we have this nice like ripple effect of it just hopefully stopping. There's always going to be that conflict, but it's how we choose to resolve it that's so important. And we need to be a support system for each other. Community isn't going to work without support. And support isn't going to work if we're fighting each other. So support, support, support. You are all here in this community, and you can utilize each other and work together. And that gets me going into our tools. We have so many tools in our tool belt that we're either not using or not using effectively. And first and foremost, everyone in the community, you all have different professions and skills and traits and this and that make you unique. Let's come together from time to time and offer our own services. And maybe someone's a yoga teacher and it's like, hey, I want to do a free yoga class for activists, or a mindfulness class, or I want to get together and have a meetup and cook some food, or hey, I'm a nutritionist and I want to offer some really good insight and perspective for outreachers. Like, let's utilize the tools we have human being wise in our community and work together. The other tools that we have that we're not using as much as we should are all the books, all the movies, all the documentaries, all the websites out there. Education is power. In the beginning, I used to go out and do my outreach thinking I knew it all without educating myself. And we know what it's like to have those outreach conversations and be like running around in our mind trying to like white lie around things and figure out how to answer this combative and how to object that combative. It's really hard, and that's exhausting. When we're more professional on a topic, it's easier for us to talk about that topic. It's like in sales. I used to be in sales. In the beginning, I knew nothing about my product. I was selling summer camp merchandise, and I could care less about the merchandise. It was really hard for me to have sales calls because they were short, and I didn't know anything about my product, which exhausted me because I felt like I was doing Gesundheit. I felt like I wasn't doing justice for myself and making money. Same thing with vegan outreach. If you go out and do outreach or having conversation with people and you might not know a lot of information, it's a lot more difficult to have a very powerful and thought-provoking conversation. Now, I'm not saying it's bad if you don't, because everyone's on a different level, but it's what you do next. Educate yourself. I talk more about this tomorrow. Education is so important. The more professional we become on a topic, the easier it's going to be for us to convey our message. We're all professionals on the ethical side of animal agriculture. It's easy. We can talk about that for days. We can persuade people on that for days. But now when you get to the health, the environment, the religious, that sort of stuff about veganism, it's a lot more difficult for some people to convey that message. So educate yourself. We have endless tools at our disposal. And then the last thing before I wrap things up, which I'm so passionate about because I just added it on here, is social media. But not from an infighting standpoint, from a tool. And a couple different ways that we can be utilizing it more effectively. I used to have an extremely unhealthy relationship with social media. And if you're not on social media, it is a powerful tool for activism, so maybe you want to try. But I totally envy you for not being on social media 100%. But I think it is one of, if not the most powerful tool we have in this movement right now. Just the reach that it allows us to get if used effectively. And so, wow, that was weird. Did that get really loud? Okay, sorry. In the beginning of my activist journey, I had an extremely unhealthy relationship with social media. I took the approach of my validation was from others in the form of likes, comments, and follows. And I thought that's what social media was about. I thought I had to make this post about the animals because of how viral it was going to go, or how many people were going to comment something about it, or how many people were going to share it. That's how I thought my social media platform was run, which sent me into this really negative spiral of having this validation being external, when the validation should come from within. And if we're using that platform that way, that's not going to be our ticket to success, to be using that effectively for the animals. So what I advocate for people to do is really do some inventory and understand what your relationship is like with social media. Is it a healthy one? I did a poll of on Instagram, how many of you, or do you have a healthy relationship with social media? 75% of the people said yes. I go, BS. I was like, there's no way. Some of the people I was seeing on there that have told me they don't clicked yes. And I was like, come on, who are you trying to prove here? You don't need this validation. Really get authentic and honest with yourself. And I had that slap in the face where I was like, dude, you need to be using social media a lot differently. And you need to be more authentic with yourself and with your followers. And so I ask people to just, if you want to use social media as a platform, be you and only you. Step number 1, be authentic. Speak your message in your own narrative. Don't worry about whether you have 10 followers or 10,000 or 10 million. People are going to hear your message some way. There's always that person, and everyone tells me this little story. Yeah, I had this friend from back in kindergarten who just randomly saw one of my posts and is now vegan. Someone's always listening. Someone's always watching. Do this. Be authentic to yourself. Don't try to be anyone else, and just write from the heart and speak your truth. Because your followers and the people that are going to love your stuff and they're going to comment on your stuff are going to be who are truly receptive to your message. Don't try to be anyone else. I think it's so hard on social media, especially with this whole competition mindset here. But use social media to be authentic to you and authentic to the world, because that's going to be authenticity for the animals. Because you're going to write one hell of a post when you're being authentic to yourself than if you're just trying to be someone else and fit the mold. Be you. Write a poem if it's not that you want to write a post. Write it all positive if you don't want to write negative. Be who you want to be on social media. And really try to focus on eliminating success in the form of likes, follows, and comments. Utilize the whole equation of success to be, are you impacting people? Are you engaging with your people in the messages and in the comments? Are people really being receptive to your message? Are you meeting some people in life and you're getting to connect with other human beings that you've met on social media? That's success. Success is not likes, comments, and follows. And then 2 more things about social media. FOMO, fear of missing out. I think everyone knows what that is. It's the whole if you were in college and all your friends are at a party and you're just sitting at home and you're like, oh, I should be out there, and it's stressful and this and that. The same thing happens in the activist movement. You're sitting at home trying to take a break and you see all of these other activists out there at a vigil or taking really good photos or posting about this or sharing this, and you kind of feel bad that you're missing out. This takes a lot of unnecessary strength out of us. If you're taking a break, let it be the break, uninterrupted, remember. So fear of missing out, try to eliminate it. Easier said than done, but we gotta work on creating this healthy relationship with social media. And then the last part, or 2 more parts, live streams. A big thing that I've got that people say that it brings them down and stops them from utilizing this tool of live. I think it's the most underutilized tool we have in this movement. Going live. Bring someone with you in the moment. It's authentic, it's raw. But some people are like, oh, but no one's watching, or I have one person. All of your views come from after the live. Speak to your live stream as if 1,000 people are watching. And don't put a piece of tape over the little red thing that shows how many people are watching. Don't give a crap about how many people are watching, because if the content's there and you're authentic, people will see it. And then lastly, for headspace wise and all sustainability of energy, I don't know if you're all familiar, but on Facebook and on Instagram, you can be the painter of your thread. You can design your thread so you can choose what images or videos you see. So do this for yourself. On Facebook, you can unfollow, not unfriend. You can unfollow anyone you want. I literally have unfollowed every single one of my Facebook friends. Sorry, Facebook friends. I will intentionally go to people's pages to check them out, but my feed right now is my post and ads. It's a beautiful Facebook feed. Like, I log on, and I get it done. I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna write a post. I can't scroll. It's just add, and then it just literally it stops, and Facebook won't go anymore. I'm like, it took me a while. It took me 3 weeks to unfollow everyone, like just slowly here and there. But I did it because I needed to for my headspace. You might not need to. You might need that constant slaughterhouse footage, or that people out there. Not everyone needs that. Or that seeing people out there getting active. That might be you. Custom tailor your own thread. On Instagram, you can mute people's stories and their posts to where you don't see that nice little orange circle at the top. You're not forced to click someone's story that you don't know what you're about to get into. And you can also mute their posts to where your feed is who you want to see. So go and follow all these puppy and kitten accounts and just have those take up your feed. But I'm not saying I don't unfollow or unfriend these people. I will still go to the Save Movements page. I will still go to specific individuals' pages when I'm talking with them and I'm meeting them. I will still engage with people on my time, when I want to, when I have set an hour out of my Saturday to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go engage. I'm gonna go watch slaughterhouse footage. I'm gonna go see what's going on in this movement. I'll do that, but on my terms. So that's, I think, social media in a nutshell, to be utilized more effectively, so to really be focusing on that. And then summing things up, I truly, truly believe we can sustain our activism long term, and we can be activists forever if we focus on, 1, taking care of what's up here. Really doing that inventory and that self-reflection and holding yourself accountable for being the best version of you. I know it's repetitive, but we need to talk about it over and over. Take care of yourself. Also focus on the thoughts you have, the words that you have, the things that you do, and the people that you spend time with. Align those with positivity. You will only see success. I promise you, it's amazing. Also focus on aligning your activism with your skills, with your passions. Utilize the tools that we have at our disposal, and then also work on community. I think if we can do these things with a really nice self-care routine and being okay with taking a break, reminding ourselves of the hockey analogy, that's how we're gonna see, just this inclusive movement that's lifting each other up and not bringing each other down. So thank you, everyone. Questions?
That's true. It affects doing all of that will affect all of it.
Oh,
Not only
100%.
your activism, but it will affect your personal life, it will affect your relationship with
Yeah.
other people. It affects, really, taking
Yeah.
that approach will affect your whole entire life.
Basically, she was saying taking this approach will affect your whole life. So you have a question? Yes.
Yeah.
I'll repeat the question as well.
What about routines? I heard you kind of touch upon it a little bit, like nightly and morning routines. Like, what is your take on that?
I think the podcast I was listening to this morning was on routines. My 2019, I'm just telling you a little bit more about me. My 2019 main intention was morning routine. I think having a routine is going to help activism, but it's going to help your life. And if we're helping our life, then it's just going to naturally affect our activism. And I think that having that morning, I don't know about having a full day routine and being that meticulous to every step that you take, but I think I always used to say greatness happens before 8. but now I'm thinking greatness happens before 6:30. Like, the earlier we can wake up and the healthier and happier we can feel and the more productivity we can get done in the morning, that it's just gonna set us up for success. Whether it be waking up, like my morning routine that I'm trying to implement now it's changing my life. It's waking up and the first thing I'm doing is just pounding one of these of water. Not pounding, it's really hard in the morning. I'm like, but drinking water and stretching instead of initially going like this. I think a routine is just creating a new habit. And when we create new habits that are positively focused on taking control of ourselves and being better versions of ourselves, because that's what a routine is essentially doing. It's helping us change a certain behavior, and it's helping us get to a place to where we feel more organized, more structured, less energy is being exerted. Because if we're just running around the day and no schedule, no routine, we're exhausting a lot of energy. If you know that by 8:30 in the morning you've already worked out, drank 40 ounces of water, stretched, did some meditation, got a little bit of work done, maybe already wrote your post for the day if you're into social media, and you get that done before 8:30, 9 in the morning, and have had breakfast, the world's yours. Like, that's what I hope to be at. So yes, I think everyone should have a morning and an evening routine.
I got a book recommendation for you later.
Cool, I'd love that. Question in the back. The one book, so I have 3 books that I didn't mention one, but the first one was A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. That was sort of my life transformative first step. Was when it's about, he wrote a book called The Power of Now, which is what most people read first, about being present in the now. But A New Earth really helps you focus on being present with yourself and eliminating this egoic mind, this voice, and really being you and understanding who you are. That's a good book. The PMA Effect is probably one of the most badass books I've ever read. John Joseph is a ex really big hardcore band person, houseless, drug addict, like went through the stuff back in the day and is now a vegan Ironman and wrote this really cool book, and he just says it how it is. It's called The PMA Effect, and it's talking about a positive mental attitude. Highly, highly recommended. I'm like 100 pages in and love it. And it's broken up into like 3-page chapters. And the other one is An Untethered Soul. An Untethered Soul is going to really talk about finding your authentic self. And I think the more we can focus on being better versions of ourselves, the better we're going to be for the animals. The stronger we're going to be. Yes?
You talked about cognitive behavior therapy. How are you applying that in your activism?
So I don't know enough about cognitive behavioral therapy to where I actually put stuff into use. I just, like I said in the beginning, a lot of what I talk about can be related to CBT. I just haven't had the time to sit down and actually look at it, because people have come up to me and are like, hey, did you train in CBT, or were you talking about this stuff? So it's something that I do want to look into. So if you have any book recommendations or articles or anything.
I can send you a workbook that I found that's like a self-help workbook.
Epic. Let's connect.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment that
Yes.
I am a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Cognitive behavioral therapist in the house.
I practice for neurology every day.
Sweet.
And I wanted to state that a lot of what you identified is actually a lot of what I work with my clients almost every day. I call it mindfulness-based.
Mindfulness.
Cognitive-based behavioral
Okay.
therapy, which is also a new form of it. But there are really specific tools that we can use.
Do you want to use the microphone?
Sure.
She's talking about specific tools for cognitive behavioral therapy. It's really cool
Right.
stuff.
I mean, I think what you were talking about, I think you were really just right there talking about some good tools. Taking a break is really good for everything in our lives. It's about good mental health. When we have good mental health, we improve our stamina. We're able to pursue whatever it is in our life. Taking a rest, getting balance in our lives. We were talking a lot about balance. And finding that balance in ourselves is very important. Reconnecting with ourselves, finding the spirit in us. So all of that is absolutely needed. And so specific tools are stop, take a breath, right? Observe what's going on within yourself in that moment, and then proceed. It's an acronym, stands for STOP.
Like it.
So I think that you were basically saying that, and so I wrote that down to show you that. Yeah, I mean you're using the tools and you don't quite realize it, But then the mindful moments that you're talking about, you stop and take a breath. That's taking a mindful moment and just checking in with yourself. There's also something they call a body scan. And it's the same thing. When you do a body scan, you're kind of really checking, how am I feeling right now? You know, is there tension in my body? You know, how stressed am I feeling? Okay, what do I need right now that will help me reduce that stress? You know, physically, and there's mentally and emotionally. And if we're checking in with ourselves, like we're talking about, doing that constantly throughout our day, you're going to be in such good mental health that you're going to be awesome, you know, no matter what it is that you're doing, you know. And so I really appreciate what you are saying. I really support it. God, I wish you could go out there. You're just talking about good mental health practices, really. And if everybody was practicing that, we would see, I think, a very great decrease in the anxiety that we're seeing in our culture, where that's the number one complaint with the doctors and of course the mental health practitioners. We get a lot of it. But so yeah, anxiety and depression, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, unable to figure out what we want to do in our lives. And so I really want to support very much that what you were talking about is absolutely good, very good ideas, no matter what you're pursuing in your life, really.
Appreciate it.
Closing time. One more question, anyone? If not, I'm always, there it is. I'm always open to chatting after. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, same place. They created a special item for brunch tomorrow. It was like some tofu scramble on this really yummy thing. 10 o'clock, I'm going to be giving a talk on different insights and perspective from my travels of last year on things that I feel that we need to do more of in this movement to progress to that end goal. But then the bulk of it's going to be on 5 strategies for effective communication with non-vegans. So outreach tips and techniques. So tomorrow's a really good day because then after that we'll be having a Cube of Truth in the evening at 6:30. 6:30 where?
In Tempe on Mill.
In Tempe on
Mill Avenue.
Mill Avenue.
And
We'll talk about the event tomorrow in specific. So if you can be here tomorrow, it's really amazing. I'm more excited for the tofu scramble than the talk. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll do both. So that'll be tomorrow. And if you ever have questions, I'm always available online. Just Joshua Entis on all the platforms. Just send me a message. And if you have any recommendations, workbooks, books, life things, just let me know. So thank you again.